Hi, I'm Stefan Grobe. Drug shortages have been an old problem, but over the past few years they have hit record levels. A consistent stream of supply issues has disrupted the deliveries of vital medicines, from hormone replacement therapy to cancer chemotherapies to medicines used to the treatment of the newest set of diabetes. Some of those shortages are now subsiding, others are persisting. That's why on top of the EU health policy agenda is the Critical Medicines Act.
Aiming to address shortages experienced during the COVID-19 crisis. EU production, distribution, stockpiling and joint procurement. And improving cooperation between national administrations, pharma, civil society and the scientific community.
We're talking about essential medicines such as painkillers, insulin and antibiotics. But the list could easily be much longer. We wanted to know from citizens in Europe which medicines should be on such a list. Medicines against which diseases?
No, I think I'm healthy. I rarely take medicine, so I don't have any problem with that.
Remembering the issues we had also during COVID, so I think that stockpiling medicines is very important, and definitely to become independent of third countries in that respect is super important.
I just was with the doctor, a special doctor, and he prescribed me something. I was kind of shocked because I didn't expect anything. I should start immediately, and I went to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy says that no, it's out of stock. So I went to another pharmacy. They would say, oh, yeah, it's confirmed, it's out of stock.
Well, I'm personally not a fan of the fact that you keep everything so secluded. Because, for instance, I go often to Asia, and in Asia they have other things that we don't have in Europe.
Sometimes we have to choose between some medicine. We have to choose that one instead of this one because, it's not refounded by the healthcare.
Let's bring in Gerardo Fortuna now, who has followed very closely the development of the Critical Medicines Act for Euronews. Gerardo, good to see you. So, tell us about the origins of this legislative initiative. Who had the idea?
Of course, there have always been shortages in the EU. There was one in particular that started this discussion between the Commission and Member States. There was the one in 2022 on amoxicillin, which is an antibiotics. And then there were some initiatives like a critical medicine list at EU level that was drafted by the European Medicine Agency with the help of the Commission, of course. And in the end, also this Critical Medicine Alliance, which is a cooperation platform between industry and also member state.
So, although Ursula von der Leyen initially had suggested some urgency, the whole matter is not on the list that you just described of the to-do list until the end of March. What's going on?
To be fair, it's always been Oliver Varelli, the Health Commissioner, who presented this initiative as something to present in the first 100 days. It was a bit of a decision by the Commission and the current Commissioner to prioritize this one because it was a bit of a low-hanging fruit, because the other big topic, the Biotech Act at the EU level, it seems a bit too far in terms of the development stage.
I want you to look into your crystal ball anyway. Will the Critical Medicines Act see the light of day in 2025?
I'd say that 2025, this is our timeline. Yes, there will be a Critical Medicine Act by the time.
Why do drug shortages happen? There are multiple reasons. Geopolitical factors like the COVID pandemic, the Ukraine-Russia war, or Brexit. A sudden spike in demand due to a rapid increase of a particular disease. Or a sudden drop in supply because of recalls or quality problems.
Whatever the reasons for a shortage, it puts patients in a very uncomfortable position because medical supply issues can be distressing and frustrating. And that's why policymakers decided to act. Joining me now is Belgian Health Minister Frank van den Broeke, one of the driving forces in Europe in favor of the Critical Medicines Act. Welcome to the program, Minister. You led the EU charge against drug shortages after the COVID era. Tell us how that experience shaped your political thinking.
The trigger for us was an experience that was really very bad, one of the worst shortages we ever had with thrombolytics. And at a certain moment, we were even afraid that patients would die because of the shortage of that medicine. And we saw the same thing happening in other countries. Production that disappeared, impossibility to act by governments. And so indeed we called for an EU initiative in May 2023, and 23 EU member states joined us, which shows that this was a structural problem present everywhere.
And what should the new Critical Medicines Act focus on?
Well, the first is that you should have a good insight in your real vulnerabilities. Which medicines are vulnerable to shortages and why? And this means that you have to screen critical medicines, to examine the vulnerabilities and to better understand the supply chains and the supply chain problems. That's the first thing. Secondly, obviously, you need solutions in terms of production in Europe, which means that you should think about how for some basic critical medicines where the supply chains are very vulnerable, how can you reshore to Europe production? And finally, we should try to help each other and not try to make life of other member states more difficult. And this means that you should be cautious with national stockpiling. When one member state tries to protect itself by a national stockpile, that may be causing a problem for another member state. And so coordination of how you go about national stockpiles and national protective measures is very important.
Will the Act also tackle the issue of too much dependence from countries like China and India?
Yes, I think the fact that 70 to 80% of our pharmaceuticals are dependent on production in countries like China and India is a problem. Certainly, if you look at the geopolitical situation, one of the solutions is a diversification of international partnerships. Maybe if you have, let's say, a layer of third countries that can come to help you, you're better protected. So the idea is not to isolate yourself from the world. The idea on the contrary is to have secure provision by interesting partnerships and by not be too dependent on countries like China or India.
The question for the future will be, can the EU achieve drug supply sovereignty? The Critical Medicines Act will be designed to come as close as possible to this goal, to the benefit of millions of patients in Europe.